A playlist original.
All right, hello everyone, and welcome to an episode. Back to the Box Observer presents deep dives with Owen and Gaius. It's been a long time.
Dude, it is good to see you, man. It is great to see you. Good to be back, and just good to be recording again, man. I missed you.
Yeah, for everyone listening, we Owen's been like out of town for work,
Yep.
for like a new job that he's been doing. So it's been just trying to figure out like a schedule, like, hey, when can we record? Has been not issue, that's like the wrong word, but like just trying to figure out when we can make it work. Because even with the every other week, like, I mean, he was gone, and then I didn't even know how long he was going to be gone. Like I texted you last Monday assuming that, like, because 2 weeks for like a long time to like be gone to
I
one
know.
place. So
Yeah.
when you were like, oh, I'm still here until like the following Sunday, I was like, oh shit, well, that
Yeah.
changes a lot.
Yeah, no. So for everybody out there, I've actually I got a new job and I've been doing a lot of training. My new job's been great with getting me trained up for the new weeks to come and everything. So I was in Pennsylvania for a week, and I've been in Kansas City for the last couple weeks. In 2 weeks, I'm actually going to Arkansas again for 2 weeks. So I am bouncing around all over the country, just kind of getting things done and settled in. So it's been a little bit of a transition, but it's good to be back and good to be here. And I in the rush to pack everything for 2 weeks, which I didn't realize I had to pack a lot for two
Yeah,
weeks.
it's a
Like,
lot.
like packing a duffel bag for 2 weeks away, and like that hotel room was my like home for a couple weeks, which
Sanctuary.
was which was kind of crazy.
Yeah,
And so that was definitely a little bit of a different experience. I haven't traveled for that
like
long ever
this.
before. So definitely need to bring my mic next time, and so we should be back on schedule after this episode. But yeah, good to be back, man. It's good to see you, and just ready to talk about kind of what we've been watching.
Doing.
And also, honestly, your pick was a great
Oh, thank
pick.
you.
It's I feel like it inspired a lot of movies that kind of came after it.
Came after it.
Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to getting and deep diving, like we always like to do, into this next episode, man. It's good to see you.
Yeah, so this one should be fun. It was funny because I've been trying to get you to watch this movie for a bit. I think I sent it to you even before we started doing the deep dive
You've
show.
mentioned this at least 3 or 4 times, I'd say.
Yeah, you're like, what should I watch? And I like sent that, and you were like, nah, I mean, not in the mood for that. You're like getting more in the mood for something else. So I've been trying to like get it in, and I think I was talking to someone else that watches that listens to the show, and they're like, why don't you just finally just use it? And I was like, yeah, I think I'm gonna use it. And
Bro, I
see
have
what
to watch
happens.
it. I physically have to watch it in order to. Yeah, you
Yeah,
cornered me, man. You cornered me.
yeah, because I was like, and it had been a long time since I've actually watched it, so like
Yeah.
that was refreshing too, and kind of took me back to the first time I saw it in theaters. Like I told you offline, like amongst our like film school friends were like, oh,
Yeah.
this movie's so good, like I thought everyone had seen it, and then I'm
Yeah.
like looking up info for the episode, and I was like, oh, this movie like flopped financially, like no one saw it. It was like
It
a
didn't cost
bomb.
very much to make.
It cost a lot to make, but just didn't make a lot of
We'll
money.
get into it. We'll get into it too. But no, it was definitely a good pick and something I hadn't seen before. So I'm looking forward to it.
So in the meantime, I guess, okay, the last time I saw you was when we saw Oppenheimer together.
Yeah.
So we know we saw that, and that was really good. Well, I liked it. I think I liked it more than you and our buddy Serge liked it. I still can't tell. Like he's still like feeling a certain way about being disappointed by it a little
Yeah.
bit. I thought it was good though. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because like when we left the theater, he was like it seemed like he was pretty disappointed. Like when we
yeah,
left.
like someone kicked his
And
puppy.
yeah,
So, yeah,
seriously, it did kind of seem like that.
yeah,
But I think that he just had such high expectations. Like when we were driving over there, when he picked me, because he picked me up first before we picked you up, and he's
yeah.
like, "I'm going in with no expectations," but I could feel there was a little
There was
underlying,
some
like
expectation.
he had high expectations for this movie. I knew he did.
Yeah,
So when we left, I could definitely tell that sort of presence where he's like, yeah, I didn't kind of live up. But I think a lot of movies are like that. Like when you kind of go in with a specific outlook, and also you
yeah.
have no idea, there's no precedent of what you're expecting of a specific movie. I mean, Christopher Nolan has an entire, like a plethora of other different types of films. I know you and Jackson just rated all of them, which I
Yeah,
have
yeah.
some comments, by the way, of
Oh,
how you rated
a lot
those.
of people, a lot of people do. Like I won that poll on both pages on Back to the Blockbuster and G Reels, but it felt like I didn't win because I got a lot of messages being like, yeah, yours is like better, but like, why do you have this movie here and that movie there?
Yeah.
Like they were still judging the hell out of it. So I didn't
Yeah.
feel like I won it. I didn't feel like I won it all. I was like, all right, well,
Yeah,
can't
I
win
know.
them all, dude.
Yeah, Jackson's was interesting for me for sure. I think that his definition of a Christopher Nolan movie is different than ours, I think.
Yeah.
But going into a movie like completely blind and seeing just the trailers, even though we know we've talked about it many times how trailers are very revealing nowadays, I feel like Oppenheimer did a great job not revealing that, which was great.
Yeah.
I thought it was fantastic. The score was amazing. It was
Yeah.
blasting in my ears the entire
It's like
time. The IMAX was great.
every single scene had
Every
like a
single
piece of
scene
music
was like
under
I
it.
was about to
Yeah.
about to climax.
Yeah, that's what it felt. I was like, why does every scene feel like it's like the end of the movie a little bit? Like everything's like important.
I know, it was crazy. And it was 3 hours of that. It was 3 hours of that. So I was mentally exhausted and drained after it, but it was great, man. And I think that I've still yet to see Barbie, so that's definitely on my list after this. But in terms of what I've been watching recently, like, gosh, how can I even, is hotel like channel surfing even worth talking about?
Like, what are you watching for 2 weeks in your hotel room? Like,
I'm telling you, I was watching like
bad TV.
I'm telling you, okay, this is such a guilty pleasure, but for me, hotel TV is great because I hate channel surfing at home, but when I'm at a hotel, for some reason, if I find diners, drive-ins, and dives on the TV late night like that, I'm done. I'm watching that for the rest of the night, which is great. But I actually did watch Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. I watched that while I was there. It was surprisingly better than I remembered, although it was like, it's kind of this weird trajectory of trilogies where the second movie is always slow. It's always super slow, I feel like.
Yeah.
And it for me, like back when we talked about Star Wars, the second one of that new trilogy, not very good. This movie, I would say it's the weaker of the trilogy of the new Planet of the Apes movies. So it's like, I wonder if there's going to be a trilogy nowadays that is going to find a way to make the second one like keep us on our toes, which I think obviously the best example is Empire for Star Wars, because the Empire Strikes Back. So but besides that, like, it's really hard to find a like sequel where we know a third is coming that is actually going to be one of the better ones of the trilogy, because that Dawn of the Planet of the Apes is like seeing two fictitious monkeys like crying over a baby and like their dam or whatever it is that they're worried about. Like, it wasn't really that like gripping. so
I think all three of them as a whole are good. Like, like three of them together. They are also much better than I thought any of them were going to be.
Oh yeah,
because I remember when Rise of the Planet of the Apes came out, I was like, I have very, very low expectations for this, and
it was great.
It was really good. I was surprised, but
I think that movie specifically, Andy Serkis has done a great job pioneering the and leading the charge on motion capture and what it can actually become. And so that's what I think that trilogy has done, and it has done it spectacularly. Like, it's been a great way to do that. I'm trying to find War for the Planet of the Apes, the third one. It's not on HBO. It's not on some of the other streaming services. I know HBO only has the second one. It doesn't even have the first one. So I'm like,
what weird licensing deal do they have? They only have like the second movie.
Weird. Yeah, super weird. But I think it's done a great job in just that sect of types of movies where, I mean, it really seems like the opportunity is endless for these types of movies where we have motion capture and CGI and digital enhancement has just become so incredible, where we have this ability to be able to manipulate actual people to look like different people and different creatures and different whatever it is. I mean, even
that's why there's like a big argument for a lot of those guys to get Oscar nominations and stuff, because everyone's like, that's still real acting. It's still a lot better than a lot of people on screen.
Instead of just like what do you call them? You call them like sort of like outskirt Oscars, where it's like you give them like, oh, here's a digital here's a best CGI.
Years down the line. But like, I mean, there's always been an argument for motion capture performances. Another argument is for voiceovers. they should be considered for Oscars. Well, a lot of people were like, well, no, you're not physically performing, but they always use like Robin Williams as a genie in Aladdin as like a good example of like, hey, that was a full-on performance. That just wasn't him just like in a recording booth, like phoning it in. Like he really physically, like if you watch footage of him recording that movie, like
he is the character
he fully did it. So I mean, the Academy's, I think, getting better when it comes to like being more open to stuff like that. I mean, it'll be interesting to see, because like we were talking about this yesterday on the show about Barbie, and I think Barbie's actually going to get some nominations because it's made a lot of money. But I just wonder, I was like, I don't know
yet?
Yeah, over $1 billion. So I was like, I can see it getting nominated for a lot. I just wonder if the Academy is still too like highbrow to be like, I'd be like, oh, we can't give it to like that movie. I guess we'll see, but I think it's definitely going to get nominations. I mean, it's funny because Oppenheimer and that movie are going to ride that wave together, like starting in July all the way to when award season is over. I think those two movies are going to be in the conversation in a big way. Come Oscar time. I mean, if we're still not striking, we'll see.
Gosh. I mean, I was re-listening to one of our episodes about how like we're gonna get a Christmas present for this, like the end of the strike, and I mean, it's kind of trending that way, you know.
It seems like it is, and I was so weird because I was doing that when I was recording with Jackson. It's been over 100 days for the writer's strike, so him and I have been talking about that for 106 days actually, and it doesn't feel that long. But it really has been, and I guess they had a meeting today again, and they still can't come to terms over the streaming residuals and the AI stuff. So we'll see how long it goes.
It's gonna keep coming, man. It's gonna keep coming.
I know. I just don't want any film delays. Like I need Dune Part 2 to come out when it's supposed to come out.
Dude, I rewatched Dune actually. I did rewatch Dune. It's so good. The first episode, the first part, it's so good.
I need to rewatch it, hopefully before the one comes out in November and they don't push it back. I'm really nervous about that because I think they want those actors to promote it. And they can't if they're striking. But I don't know, just keep it. Like other movies have been doing well so far without any, like very little promotion. Like, I mean, I don't know if the Meg 2 needs promotion, but it did well without Jason Statham promoting it. It made money. I kind of shook my head too. Like I don't get it. It's huge in China. They love it.
I mean, the thing that's funny is watching Hotel TV, I saw a fuck ton of commercials, and the Meg 2 had so many commercials. And honestly, like they started, like, you know, when they released the new Shazam trailers where they had like Wonder Woman and like pretty much the entire climax of the movie in the commercial. They kind of did that with the Meg. Like there was a lot of really, really cool scenes in the Meg 2 that I saw just based on the trailer. And I was like, oh, okay, I kind of know where this movie's headed.
That, you know,
and it looks
the last 20 minutes of the movie, bro.
Yeah. And I mean, it's visually stunning. Like it's incredible CGI work. But I mean, I think that this new age of sort of like the Sharknado and like disaster movies is just becoming significantly more CGI like intensive. Like it's basically like that's the entire thing. And I think we've seen that since San Andreas. We've seen that since Day After Tomorrow. We've seen that like since like the beginning of like this new age of technology. So I think that's not going to stop. But one of the things that I really wanted to bring up was like, I think that especially with this writer strike and like with Dune and all this stuff, I think that it's really, really interesting to see all of these actors and writers who are continuously still promoting it. Like I think after a certain amount of time, like it becomes, I don't want to use the word like quote unquote not popular, but like, you know how it's kind of like when you're in the spotlight, like you have to kind of ride the wave of like how it is. I really think we're seeing the true colors of a lot of these actors and writers, and being like, I mean, it's the thing where I think I saw a social media post where, I mean, each actor donated $1 million or something to
a lot of them
fund.
did. Like a lot of big ones did. I mean, that's the best way a lot of people thinks for them to help. I mean, because there was like some people being like, oh well, shouldn't they be on the picket lines with everyone else? But I think it kind of takes away
Pay
from
them. They're doing it to get paid.
Yeah,
So
I think it's kind of taking away from the little guy if they're there with them. Like that's the thing. Like everyone's like, oh, well, actors make so much money. Like no, like they said, like I think it was over 80% or more make less than $26,000 a year. So like you can't compare it to like Brad Pitt or Julia Roberts. Like they are making a lot of money.
that's the 1% of the 1%.
Yeah, but like 80, but like the majority of them aren't. So I respect big name actors for donating like that. I think I thought it was hilarious when Stephen Amell kind of came out and basically said he didn't support striking.
Yeah, dude, fuck him, man.
And then he went out there on the picket line like this week. I was like, one of the guys that listens to our show, they were like, "That's what happens when your publicist tells you you have to do that after you like
that's fucked up, man.
After you stepped in it." And then like he tried to backpedal and it didn't work. Like it just got worse. I was like, "Just stop talking, dude." Like,
yeah, seriously.
And then he was promoting his show like when you're not supposed to. Like so many people put on Twitter like all these videos that he deleted, but that were on his social media being like, "Hey, everyone watch Heels." Like I know like it's frustrating because that show got delayed its second season because of COVID, and now you can't promote it. And the second season is finally out.
Is that the new wrestling show?
That's the wrestling. It's in the second season. Yeah, apparently.
Hotel TV, man. I've been seeing a lot of commercials. I know that it's a wrestling show because of commercials from Hotel TV.
So, apparently, it's good. I just a lot of people don't watch it.
It looked intriguing.
It's on Stars.
It looked okay. Yeah.
So, but he's known for kind of stepping in it. So I wasn't surprised when he talked on a turn. And then
I mean,
also
for any fan of the show, I'm a big Stars fan with like the Hulu subscription. Like that place, like it has all the movies. So I'm a big Stars fan. But I mean, if you're gonna be kind of reneging on your promise and your statements about like what you think about the strike, like I don't really have a lot of respect for you.
Well, I was laughing because I was like, how embarrassing for him to like that became like a big story slowly about what he said, because all these smaller trades picked it up, and then finally like they're like, oh, this is getting bigger. Then Variety picked it up, and Deadline, and I was like, if you're a fellow actor and you see him on the picket line after he said that he was, 98% of them voted to strike, and he said he was not one of those 98%. So if you see him on the picket line, are you like, hey, we know you didn't vote to support this strike, so why are you here?
Like he's gonna get a lot of like he's gonna be one of those actors that's gonna be tough to work with, because it's like, even if he's a good guy, like I mean obviously I don't know him personally or anything like that, but if you're on set with him, you kind of know in the back of your head, no matter what, hey, you didn't really back us, like you didn't really have our back at the end of the day, so like why would I be here to try and further your career? I know you've already had a successful career. I'm the one who's been bleeding blood, sweat, and tears for $45K a year.
That was the big complaint. He was on a TV show for 8 seasons as a lead. He was on Arrow for 8 years. So like he made money off of like network residuals for a really long time. And I would think that he would write
shit. He didn't write shit.
And all he did was like, and I would think that he would want as an actor like a fair amount of those streaming residuals too for Arrow being on Netflix, rerunning. So someone posted the other day that Suits is now like the most watched like library show on streaming. It's like 12.7 billion hours of it have been viewed, and they said
that's crazy.
And then one of the writers said like, and I made $259 last quarter off of my residuals from that show. So like Netflix is making a lot of money streaming the hell out of it, and he was like, I got $259 last quarter from writing that show,
for writing the script for Mike and all those guys out there
for as long as he did. That's crazy. I was like, and that should be like what is important and what people should really pay attention to. Is and what's not fair. And this that streaming service is making a ton of money off of that, not only that show, but that's a big example. Like, is there
because especially a show like that show is exclusively dialogue. Like there's no action, there's nothing. It's all about how the actors and the characters interact with each other. So it's like without the writing there's nothing. Whereas if you take something like Arrow, if you have somewhat bad dialogue and a little bit of bad writing, like it's okay because there's
you got action
scenes. It's like you can kind of get through it, I guess, and kind of like shove it off, be like, oh well, Arrow has some cool moves and some cool gadgets, but like at the end of the day, it's like you gotta respect the writers. And I know we've talked about this, and we're gonna continue to talk about this until I honestly think I think the holidays. I really do. I still think it's going to be a Thanksgiving present or a Christmas present for us then, and for all the writers out there that are going to
Yeah.
reap the benefits finally, or at least I hope so. Or else, like, we're going to see some serious degradation within the industry of writers just leaving.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering too, since SAG and the WGA are on strike, if one makes a deal first, are they kind of like, hey, like,
Piggyback off each
can
other.
or yeah, do we wait it out with you, or do we just kind of go like, hey, like, this is the kind of deal that we got, maybe you can get a similar one? Like, I don't know how that really works, because like right now they have this whole attitude of we're all in this together.
Yeah.
And they've been meeting with, they haven't met with the actors in a bit yet, but like they had that meeting with the writers today. But I'm just wondering, there's that whole solidarity until they make one deal with one group and then another deal with another union. So I'm just wondering if they kind of wait it out together, or if they go like, hey, like, if you go first, maybe we can see if we can get something similar, or I don't know how that kind of
So
would work.
I have a question for you. As someone in the industry and everything, what's the worst case scenario for the writers in this situation?
The worst case
Like,
scenario.
did they basically say no, and they hire new writers who are willing to work for the price that they're
So they would
or like
have
like
to.
what would basically be like a fuck we lost for the Writers Guild?
Well, there's no. I mean, that I think writers would be too afraid to do it, but you could become a scab, which means that you cross the picket line and you write. Soap operas are doing this right now, and they're mad at them for doing that. But
Well, we
I
talked about this on the way to Oppenheimer. These are probably like writers who are in their 50s,
who are
40s,
fucking
like
happy to be writing. Like,
don't
they're not
care
gonna
at
have
all.
they're not gonna have a chance to write anything. And also, the soap opera industry is like an industry that if it were to go dark for that long, I don't think it would recover from it. So
It never
that's why
would.
I'm like, hey, if you want to hire scab writers, and then those actors are under contract to continue to work because they're under a different they're not in the same kind of union as the regular SAG members. They're under a different code that includes like daytime TV, like stuff like Live with like Kelly and Mark and The View. They're like they're in a different part of the union, so that's why they're still able to work. So like I don't have any problems with scabs on that. I think if scabs crossed over to like network TV and movies and streaming, then it would be an issue. It'd be really bad, and it would show that like they're not supporting each other. A lot of writers are used to not making money, so I think they are going to wait it out as long as they can. I mean, the worst case scenario for everyone is they don't come to an agreement at all, and then you're just going to see stuff get delayed because there's no new network TV coming out. If a studio wants actors to promote their movies and they feel like it's a necessary thing to have them promote them, then they'll just keep pushing things back, and that costs money too, which that's why I think it's so weird that they don't want to budge on like paying them what they're worth, because it still costs money
costing them money to do this.
Because when you delay a movie, it's not in the same marketing budget that you had when it was going to open in November. Like, you have to remarket it again if you're going to open it in March of next year. So it's costing them money. I mean, they really just want to like dig their heels in the sand and be like, no, like, we don't want to give you this. And they're being really, 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 really shisty about revealing the actual like views and hours watched from their streaming programs.
Which makes me think they're hiding something.
Which makes me think that maybe people don't watch them as much as that we think they do. Maybe,
and
I don't know.
It brings into account like how much we actually think. Like, hey, is a view 8 seconds? Is it 30 seconds? Is it an hour?
Right.
Like what is a view? What is that? What does that actually take into account to actual monetary value in terms of like how much they're getting from those views? Or is it just a number that they're shoving out there to consumers to say this is popular?
Right. And the big bone of contention today was, should the writers in their negotiations change in their wants for the residuals from streaming? Should they change their wording to the number of views or the hours that were watched? Because like you said, a view could be like 30 seconds for all we know, and they might count that as a full view of the show, and then the streamer might be like, well, now we're not going to pay you out for 20-30 seconds of someone watching something. So I think they will have to reword what they kind of want in terms of, hey, is this, if we're getting paid residuals based on views, or are we getting paid based on hours watched, which is
Yeah.
much different than. But I encourage them to keep pushing it because I think it is weird that they hide those numbers, and I've always thought that was weird. Like,
we've been talking about this since the show's inception, dude.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me that you could actually put out a press release and say you had the most watched movie on your streaming service, and when we're like, oh, how many people watched it, and you just like, we don't have to back that up with numbers, we can just say it was the most watched movie on our streaming service.
Well, dude, literally, I just saw this meme today. It was like, oh, Netflix just released that this new show, the most streamed show of all time, and guess what? It's not coming back for a second season.
See, and then like they did that with Twisted Metal. Peacock said it was like one of their most watched like shows ever, and I was
and they're like, sorry, but it's getting canceled.
How many people are watching it? And they're like
not enough. Apparently,
you need hard numbers to back it up. Like, so I don't understand.
Dude, all I'll say is that these lawyers are making a fucking mint. They are making, like, they're probably happy about this kind of stuff. Like, this is the only group that is actually making a profit off of this, is the lawyers. And it's sad because, like, we need these writers. We need them.
Yeah, and it's crazy too. Like, you have all this kind of bad news with the strikes, but then you have all this good news with how well a lot of these movies have been doing, like Barbie, Oppenheimer, Ninja Turtles, even Meg 2. Like, a lot of these movies have been doing so well the last few weeks, and the industry is like improving in that regard, where people are going to movies again. But now you have the other side of it, which is so ugly, and like they're not coming to terms on anything, and they can't really agree on anything, and it's almost gotten downright evil a bit, where
it really has.
So like some of the studio is like, well, we can just wait them out until they are about to lose their apartments and their homes, and they need.
Well, the thing
money.
is that it's kind of sad that they actually probably can.
Yeah, I mean, like, but I agree with some of the writers I've listened to who are like, hey, we are used to being poor. We will wait you out. You guys aren't. Like, a major studio hates losing a lot of money, so they're gonna be like, like, hey, can we come to the table again on this, because we need to really talk about it. I honestly think like you have a bunch of old businessmen CEOs that aren't really industry people. Like, a lot of these guys are businessmen first. They're not. They don't really necessarily care about
it's corporate.
Yeah, I mean, they care about their bottom line and making money.
Growth. It's all about growth.
Right. And now Bob Iger and David Zaslav are like, hey, well, now we want to really have a serious talk about ending this soon. I mean, you could
now.
Fuck you, dude. You could do that a lot sooner if you just kind of, I don't know, maybe bit like, and when you're negotiating, it's all about bending like a little bit. Like, maybe you're not going to get everything that you want. You're not going to get everything that you want, but like,
it's a compromise. That's what negotiation is about.
And I feel like the studios aren't. So that's kind of where we are with that at the moment.
Should we go back to 2003 when this wasn't an issue, and this movie that you picked was actually like when the writing was there for a reason and everything?
Yeah, well, we actually had like good writers and stuff to talk about. I
wouldn't say good actors, but I'd say good writers.
Oh, and like in this or in general?
In this.
Oh, there's some good people. All right, hold on. All right. So
actor.
All right, so the movie that I chose, guys, that was a good segue, is Shattered Glass. It's a 2003 biographical drama about journalist Stephen Glass and his scandal at the New Republic. It's written and directed by Billy Ray in his feature directorial debut, and it's based on the 1998 Vanity Fair article of the same name by H.G. Bissinger, and it chronicles Glass's fall from grace when his stories were discovered to be fabricated. It stars Hayden Christensen as Glass, alongside Peter Sarsgaard, Chloe Sevigny, Steve Zahn, Rosario Dawson, Melanie Lynskey, and Hank Azaria. This movie actually came out to great critical acclaim, but like we said earlier, a lot of people didn't see it. It kind of flopped, but it actually has kind of gained a life where there's a lot of notions that are made that movies about journalism aren't, like movies about writing aren't that entertaining. And this movie is actually used alongside like All the President's Men as an example of like, no, you can really make an interesting movie about journalism. I think Spotlight's probably another one that is a really good
post
about about the inner workings of that field, which is why I was interested in it, because it kind of covers a lot of stuff that I'm into. I also was intrigued by the fact that someone could do this as long as they did and
Yeah.
get away with it, because I work in this industry, but it's entertainment, and like I don't know, it's not as serious as what they were doing for the New Republic, but we are constantly like fact checked on everything that we write,
Yeah.
especially if you're using quotes and like saying like so and so said this, like you need something to back it up. They want you to link it to like, okay, then when did they say it? Support what you're talking about. And I know this is like 1998, but it's crazy how just because this guy was so entertaining and good at gaslighting and good at lying, I guess, that he was able to get away with it as long as he did. 27 of his stories for the New Republic out of 41 were either fully fake or partially fabricated. And yeah, I would like to know what your Cliff Notes version of what you thought of the movie. I know there was one bad actor in here, I guess, for you.
Yeah. So this movie, first of all, great pick, man. This was a fantastic pick. I had never seen it. I read a synopsis of it before I watched it, and so I kind of knew that there was some fabrication initially, before watching it. But for some reason, the synopsis kind of had this weird sort of dialogue that made it seem like he had a relationship with a woman in terms of it, but the movie didn't have that at all. I don't know if it was some Wikipedia page or something that kind of said like, but his relationship with so and so made it to like sort of some things kind of come out. I think it was the blonde actress Chloe
Sevigny.
Yeah, Chloe Sevigny. But yeah. I mean, it was basically his relationship with the entire office that was that. It was
because they all loved him.
Yeah, they all loved him. I think that this is a great movie that shows the transition between the analog and the digital age, and it really shows how there's some type of like, especially like, and I'll bring up the last comment of the receptionist that he's super close with in the beginning that says, hey, listen, like, if there were pictures, how could this have been fabricated? You should have, if there were pictures, this all would have been fine. It would have been great. Right. And so I think it shows like sort of the naivete of what the internet can accomplish and what can be done through that. It also shows to me that like this man was a genius. Like as much of the fact that he was a liar and a terrible person, his cover up, his lies, his like horribleness of everything that he's done through lying to his coworkers, himself, his like, gosh, it was horrible that he did everything. And I think he lied so much that he convinced himself of everything.
That all was true. Yeah.
But at the same time, like that is a mission in and of itself. Like I still can't believe that he did all these, like making fake websites, convincing his brother to make fake phone calls, to make fake voicemails. Like I am deeply like impressed with everything that he did in order to keep his lies. And that, I think that it kind of takes into account everything that, like, kind of when we were talking about Good Time, where it was like, this criminal is smart. Like, this person is a smart person. If he used these smarts to actually do something good instead of doing something criminal, he could be successful. And the thing is, he was successful because of his lies. But like, if you could fabricate 27 fake stories, you're a great journalist. You know how to write. You're amazing.
Yeah, you don't need to do it.
Why do you need to make something up? To like, the thing is, he knew what his readers wanted to hear. He knew what his editor wanted to hear. And so like everything that he had done was exactly what, if I was hiring for a newspaper or a magazine, I'd hire him on the spot, because he's producing material that readers want to read. It's not something like, oh, Joe Biden is an old man and he's a little bit tired. It's like he only can't run the country. It's like, that's not interesting. You want to hear about something that is new, something that is fun, something that is out of the box. And this specific time period, the early 2000s, before Y2K, before the internet boom, like this is the exact moment he took that and ran with it, where he could kind of, he knew enough about digital, like computer programming. Like he made a fake website for a company that didn't exist.
Not even
Like
exist.
the fact that he did that is so impressive, that he could have taken that and become a multi-billionaire working for Apple if he wanted to. Like it's actually crazy, all the potential that he had, and instead he used it to lie. So that's
I mean, yeah, it's interesting because like it's funny when you mentioned the fake website, because when I was watching it today, I was like, I guess that would get by on someone, because all he really left on that fake website was hey, as like this like kind of cover letter, basically like, oh, your piece kind of like ruined our reputation. This is why we're like basically shutting down, and like and like there were so many factual errors in your story. Like he did enough to be like, oh, like we upset them and they're going away. And I guess if you weren't really like into the computer age and stuff like that, which I guess a lot of people wouldn't be,
not at all. Not at that time.
90 and in 98, so you'd be like, all right, that's convincing enough. That's why I think it's interesting that lie collided with like the online Forbes magazine, which was into that, like, you know, when that guy was like, he saw that Hack Heaven story and he was like, wait, why didn't you get Yahoo? He's like, why did you get this?
It might have been Ask Jeeves at that point, where it's like juked Mectronics. It's like, oh, look that up. If I searched for a company and it didn't come up, I'd be like, it's fake. It's fake. Yeah. Like immediately.
I just love when the guy's like, why did you find this? And he's just like, I don't know why I didn't find it. Like,
yeah.
And then he just starts going through it like with a highlighter and being like, oh, these are all, you know, a lot of these things I can't even like find. Well,
but the thing that's impressive is like he's coming up with realistic names, he's coming up with realistic companies, he's coming up with realistic stories, he's coming up with realistic encounters. Like it's so incredible to me that the fact that he fabricated all these things, because I mean, he'd be a fantastic novelist who could create like fictitious novels and stories that people want to hear, but instead he uses it to lie about real life, which is the thing. I mean, that's why people love fiction, is because it's fake and because it's stories that you want to hear.
Right.
And like, and he used it in the wrong way. And so I think the story is so compelling, but I hate to say it, Hayden Christensen is terrible, dude.
We're gonna feel differently about it. I think he gets better as the movie goes on. Like, I think his last few scenes with,
are you mad at me, bro? Are you mad at me?
Well, I think his last few scenes with Peter Sarsgaard are actually pretty good. Like when he was like,
oh, Peter Sarsgaard is amazing.
Well, he's like the unsung hero of the movie. I thought he's really good.
He gets his comeuppance in the end. Like he not comeuppance, but he gets his like hero moment
validation. Like,
yeah.
I thought it was cool because I feel like Peter Sarsgaard, that whole movie, there's this like deep rooted simmering anger,
hatred,
because he's just because he's so like probably upset that this guy has duped them, and he really cares about the profession. He also, I thought it was interesting too, the way they wrote it is, you know, when Steven pitches one of the ideas earlier in the movie, and then Chuck has to follow him, and he's like, oh, that's a tough act to follow. And you can tell that there's a little bit of jealousy there before he becomes an editor.
100%.
And that like, and then he was like, oh, that's a really tough act to follow. Like he does, like, this guy's putting
and
on
then the
show.
Boss comes in.
Yeah. Like this guy's putting on the show, and like I'm just trying to like pitch a regular story as a good writer.
I'm just trying to do my job. He's like, I'm gonna go to Haiti and like do something about earthquake relief.
Yeah.
And
so
like,
So I thought that was interesting about him, because I think there's a lot of integrity in that character, but I think in the beginning you get the sense of why am I not selling this the way that this guy is selling it, and why are they so into it? Yeah, and that's all he did. I mean, and the interesting thing too is that he also did enough where he could sell something, but he also was self-deprecating enough where he would talk down about himself to get people to feel sorry for him.
Oh yeah.
So he wasn't entirely like, you know, overtly confident. Like he was still doing enough where people would be like, oh, like when she finds the whole letter about school, and you know, and she's mad at him, and then like he kind of like turns around where, oh, like, Art, don't be mad at me. Like I can still work at the paper. I'm just going to go to school at night. And then she's like, wait, why are you like, you should be mad at me. I went through your mail. Like, she's like, what do you like? He was good at just like,
that was the one storyline that I don't think really played out. It was like, what, like they kind of mentioned his family and like how he was from like Highland Point or something. I think it was
yeah.
Highland Park, and like
Highland Park, yeah.
and like he needed to be a lawyer, but like it was basically just a conversation between him and Chloe, the actress, and like
Yeah.
I don't really think that really meant anything. But every time her character was on screen, she mentioned, "Oh, he might be studying." I didn't think that was necessary.
Yeah, and also I remember when we first saw
Because
this,
also, could that have been a lie? Like that could have been a lie.
No,
Was he
he
actually
could've-
going to law school?
That's another thing. You don't really know for sure because he's told so many
Yeah.
of them. And and like when they would occasionally mention like, oh, I didn't know you were talking to like Harper's Bazaar, like, are you were
I
talking
didn't
to
get that.
George?
The whole first
I-
act was basically
well,
him
I-
saying, "Oh, it's not a big deal. Send it to my voicemail."
Well,
I was like, "What
I
the
think
hell
he
is
was
this?"
trying to set up that these people were interested in talking to him, and maybe some of them were, but maybe a lot of them weren't. And like he's putting it out there, like, I don't want to make it a big deal, like just send it to my voice because
It's probably nothing.
it's probably nothing. And like I think that's another way of him setting up another lie to make himself look better. Like, hey, I have all these other people who are interested in me, but like, don't worry, like I'm still here with you guys. I would never leave.
Wanted.
Right, to seem more wanted. And I think that's what I kind of, when I was watching it today, the first like 15-20 minutes are a little not confusing, but the way in which like those character interactions are happening don't necessarily feel like real conversations so much.
Can I say one thing before I forget it? It's like hearing Hayden Christensen say the word Republic as a Star Wars fan. It just it's just like it's like I work for the New Republic. I'm like, dude, this is not your empire, man. This is not your empire. You are not creating a new republic.
All right, before I guess since we are talking about it, what specifically did you not like about him in this?
So I think that all of his lines and every time that he's on screen, I can tell he's acting. And I see a lot of the same mistakes that he made in Star Wars in this movie, where it's like every line seems a little forced. I think that most of the things that he says, I don't believe his emotion. Where and the only thing about that is that it actually works in this movie because he is lying.
Right.
So it's like it actually works in this movie because it's like, oh, like I'm being this, I'm doing that. But like his fake salesmanship didn't work for me in the beginning, where it's like he knows everything about everybody. But it didn't really seem like he was really connected with them. Like all of these things, I could tell he was a snake from the start. And it just really felt wrong for me, where I just really couldn't connect with him as a character, because he is the main character, and immediately off the bat I'm not rooting for him, because I know I already know that he's not in the right. I already feel like he's doing something wrong. He's manipulating these people. And that's what I think is like one of the biggest things about human connection, is that there are some times when you actually really want to connect with someone, and you actually want to get to know someone, and you try and like, you know, their birthday, or you know what they like, or you want to get to like, you want to invite them to your baby shower, or buy some of their products. And in that sense, sometimes people start to think that, oh, what are you trying to gain from me by getting to know me better? And that's a hard concept to try and get around. But in this movie, especially in 1998, that seems super superficial. It seems really hard for me for him to kind of do this and then start to parade around the office and say, oh, I'm doing all these great things.
Yeah.
Also, his delivery is so flat. It's so monotone. I don't really like his acting style that much. It's gone from Star Wars to Jumper to this. Like, I really don't appreciate and really like his acting style. I'm actually surprised that the casting director cast him in this role. Like, I actually think that there could have been a better person to portray this role rather than Hayden. It's tough, because it's like he's like a good looking dude, but that's not enough. That's not enough for this, like, this role for me to be convinced that he's the right role for it. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I get you. It's interesting because I think when I first saw it, and even today, there is stuff about his like basically he's always pitching something. He's always pitching some
Yeah.
kind of like idea or story.
That's the
And
character, but besides that,
yeah.
it's the acting.
And then I had to like, I looked up an interview about the real guy, and there are like similarities between how he played him and how the real guy, at least in that interview, acted. Um, I can support what you're saying, where it feels like he's acting almost like he's intentionally like, I have to mimic this real person, and it might feel forced. But I do think he is stronger in the second half of the movie when most of his scenes are with Peter Sarsgaard.
100%.
And I don't know if that's just like Peter Sarsgaard bringing the best out of him, or those scenes were just really well written. I actually thought like the cool thing about the Chuck Lane character, which Billy Ray, who wrote and directed it, he said for him, he had to identify Chuck as the protagonist and not Steven. He's like, that's the person that you're really rooting for in the end. Like, he cares about the magazine. He wants to do what's right by the magazine. And even at a point when he realizes that there's something off about this kid's latest story, I did like how I guess it happened in real life too, but how it was played out, where he's like, all right, I'm going to assume that maybe he got duped and he didn't make it up. Maybe he got like a false lead. And when he was trying to convince the other guy that worked at Forbes, like, do we really want to ruin this kid's life?
Yeah.
Because he made a mistake. So I actually like that they showed that part of him, where he's like, hey, I'm an editor. I need to support my writers.
Editor to editor. And like, he's actually
then,
trying to have his back at that point. He was trying to
be
Michael Kelly at that point, which I love Frank Azaria's character. He's one of the best characters in the movie. But like
when that guy had them going through the whole magazine circling commas, because
my god,
there's so many comma errors. He's like, what are you guys doing? He's like, what?
I love that. Like, I mean, and then we realize at the end that he's kind of fabricating this whole like conversation with the classroom at the end. Like he realizes like, hey, that was a good boss. That was someone who had my back. That was someone who will have me. But also it was a selfish act, because it was like, that was someone who will have my back even if I'm lying.
Yeah, there was also something really sad about when he saw him towards the end of the movie, and he was like, did you ever cook a story when I worked there?
And he was silent.
And he was just silent. And I thought that was like, this guy liked you and thought you were a good writer and trusted you and had your back. And even though he does sense that something's wrong with that spring breakdown story, because he does call the hotel and ask,
he verifies it. I mean, the whole thing, every article he's done has been verified. It wouldn't have been printed. He went through the entire like verification process of what it takes to get an article printed. He obviously checked that, but he's like, there's a big loophole, which means that if there's no logistical or anything, it's just the reporter's notes, and I can write down anything I want and it'll get printed because I said so.
Yep. I do like how the movie, the whole newsroom situation, like those characters felt very real as far as like how they worked in the newsroom together. I also, I've never been antagonistic whenever we've switched an editor, but I've definitely seen when people are like, I support this person and now this new person is stepping in and they don't really feel like that person's going to have their back. I thought that was really well written too, where everyone doesn't like Chuck, clearly, that they think he's kind of like, maybe like a little too by the book. It seems like they think that he also doesn't really support them, but he really does. He just, has a lot of like, he has a lot of integrity, and it's not all about kind of being like showy and doing what Steven does to sell a story. But I do like that they show that kind of antagonistic relationship between like Chuck and the rest of the team, because they clearly had Steven's back over his, and that's because Steven was good at putting on a show.
I think they did a great job of showing how, like, hey, why does this guy deserve to be an editor? Why is he the one who's getting stepped up to running the show? And like right off the bat, we don't trust the editor, and we don't trust Sarsgaard like at all. So it's like we kind of see him as the bad guy, which I think is a great take from the movie to make us sort of not really trust him at all to start, because but then they also show his human side. Like I thought it was an interesting take. Like right off the bat, as soon as he gets hired as the editor, they show him with his family and like him with his wife and him with his newborn child, and I'm like, okay, so obviously this is a big step for him. he has already shown his distaste towards the fact that he doesn't have any loyalty. One, doesn't have any like reason to be the editor. He knows that this previous Michael Kelly, he knows that Michael Kelly has a lot of followers. He doesn't have that loyalty. Like what is he going to do as editor moving forward? He already knows he's up against like a huge uphill battle. So like he already kind of knows all of these things going forward, and yet like they kind of show his human side where it's like, I mean, being editor, I'm guessing he probably got at least a 5-figure
nice little bump.
Pay raise. So it's like he's probably getting some more money for that. Like he's probably doing pretty well. So it's like you kind of see his side. The only problem I have is that Hayden Christensen's acting is so obvious to me. It's kind of like, have you ever seen Black Mass?
Yeah.
You know Joel Edgerton's character?
You love Joel Edgerton
in that movie.
Yeah.
He's so obviously a rat.
Yeah.
That it makes me so fucking pissed that no one else sees that.
Right. No, I see.
It kind of, it's not the same, but it kind of reminds me of this, where it's like he's so like Hayden Christensen is so obviously lying, and Sarsgaard is giving him so many outs and all of these chances to come clean, and he's still lying. And I mean, I love the fact that he calls him out at the end, but like it takes way too long for me, because as a viewer, it's so obvious that he should have been called out way earlier. And like even just on the conference call with the
I love that scene, by the way. It's so uncomfortable though.
After the Forbes call, if I was the boss, I would have called him and been like, dude, I know you're lying. Something's off. You need to tell me everything that's going on right now, or you're fired. Like there's so many things, and like office politics shouldn't matter at that point.
Yeah.
Like, I get the fact that he's a popular guy and people like him, but if you're fabricating stories, it took him an hour and a half for him to fire him.
Yeah.
And that's what frustrated me.
I think because like, so what they do, so like in the beginning, well, not in the beginning, when he first is like, something's up, I think he assumes that maybe he got lied to by a source, and that
because is he a good liar? I couldn't tell that Hayden Christensen was a good liar based on his acting. That's the thing that frustrated me.
Okay, that makes sense. And then like I guess like, so I was reading it that way, like, okay, well maybe he thinks he's gotten lied to, and maybe Steven, just got tricked by a source, and that's how that happened. And then it becomes obvious to Chuck that like, he is lying. But then that one guy in the office is like, hey, like, I know that you can't like fire him though, because they all like him too much. And if you fire him, they're gonna quit. And I think that weighed on him a lot. Like, I don't want the whole like it's so crazy that this one person, if they may be left, that like the whole office would be fractured because everyone liked him. And it
also could be the fact that like, hey, like, is there something about this guy that I'm not seeing? Like, is he actually telling the truth? Like, maybe he's even questioning it himself.
Because I think they only have one moment in the movie, and it's when he's pitching the Hack Heaven story, that Chuck does laugh when he's pitching the story. I think that's the only time we see him like respond in a way that's like, oh, like I'm picking up what he's selling too.
Yeah.
But then almost immediately after that, you could just tell the way Peter Sarsgaard plays it that he's either weirded out by him, or he's just like, I just don't know if I can trust you. Like when he comes in his office after they all kind of stared him down after he became editor, and like Michael Kelly leaves and they're all like looking at him like, we clearly don't like you. And then he comes in the office and he's like, oh, I'm sorry about the other day. Like, let me know if you need any help with those boxes.
If you need any help, I got you.
And you could tell that like the way
he was kind of like, wait, what are you trying to get out of me?
Yeah. You could tell then that he's like, I'm not entirely convinced by what you're saying.
The thing that's funny though is because I feel like Peter Sarsgaard always plays like the rat in a movie, so seeing him in like in a position where he's actually like the good guy, it's disarming, which was great to see sort of as a flashback for me, because most of the time I've seen Peter has been where he's
usually a bad guy, or like playing
he's usually the rat.
He usually is. He's usually not the good guy at all. I actually liked, so the movie to me takes off when the Forbes people get into it. I actually liked, even though we don't get a lot of the office stuff with like Steve Zahn and Rosario Dawson. I actually liked
Dude,
some of their
Rosario
scenes,
Dawson super underutilized.
But
Is
some of
this
their
one of
scenes.
her first movies? Because she's
Well, no,
done,
she was
did
like
nothing in it.
around that time, so she had already done 25th Hour. So this is like a year after that. Like, so she should. I mean, she had been acting since like '98, maybe a little
Why'd
bit
she take
before
this
that.
movie? Like she had what, 2 minutes of screen time?
Unless she just like maybe it was. I don't even know if it's like the writer or the director. I don't know. It did seem like a really thankless role, but I did like her brief interactions with Steve Zahn.
But like,
and I actually,
what does she actually contribute to the movie though?
What was the point
Like,
of her being?
What does she actually contribute? The fact that like she makes gosh, what's the actor's name? The thing is, he got an and credit.
Steve Zahn.
Steve Zahn. It was like and with Steve Zahn.
Steve
I was
Zahn,
like,
yeah.
I was like Steve Zahn.
Yeah, he was. You know,
during the opening credits, I was like, Steve Zahn.
He was funny though. When he called and left a voicemail on Steven's phone.
Oh, that was
like,
great.
And he was just like, "Oh, I read that piece. I'll just let you know that."
Can we get a double? Can we get a double?
I couldn't like put it down. And then I also love when they're going and they're in that conference call and they're trying to do the whole email for Drink My Chronics. And he was like, "Oh, was it an M or an N?" And he's just like, "No, what do you have?" And he's like,
"An M is in not possible."
He's like, N as in not working. He's like, "Oh,
not
try
working." Yeah.
I also loved like the little, even though it's not like entirely clever, just like the ways because I think most people, if they would have gotten that voicemail, like, oh, it gave me this guy's number, like, I don't know if I would think a second thought of like, oh, this isn't. I don't know if I would have thought to do what he did, where he was like, "Hey, like you call this number at the same time."
There's not more than one person answering the phone.
Yes, phone. Yeah. I don't know if I would have thought to do that. So,
I mean, I love it because it's basically professional dissing, where it's like on that conference call they're dissing each other professionally, where it's not like in your face, like "fuck you" kind of thing. It was kind of like, "Hey, we know you're lying, and prove it to us that you're not."
Yeah. So,
but in a professional way and very candidly
too. I mean, there were a few scenes that make me like kind of uncomfortable because it's so, that conference call scene makes me uncomfortable, and I don't know if it's because I feel bad for Chuck, who's probably like, I just got this job and this is what I'm being dealt with right now.
This is what you left me with.
And then also in a weird way, even though when Hayden Christensen is like going through his notes trying to like figure out like, oh, how to like,
God,
you know, what the numbers are and all that, and he's like stuttering
let me go
over
home and get my notes.
Yeah. That was like always like live for him, right? So he can go home and fabricate his notes.
Yep.
And then like I even think about it today, like when he called Chuck again, manipulating him when he's like, "Hey, like I just wanted to call and apologize for giving your home number out."
He calls him at what, like 1 a.m?
To that George Sims guy, and he's like, "Well, where are you?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm at work, just finishing up some stuff." And like he's at work because he's like making that fucking fake website. Like, that's the only reason that he's at work so late. And I love when he gets on the phone with him, and he's just like, "That was weird." Like there's something like there's something really off about it.
Was off.
And I also love when he gives them.
I think that is a turning point for us to realize as viewers that Sarsgaard is the good guy.
Yeah. And I also love when he gives him that business card and he's like looking at it and he's like, this doesn't like feel like
fake.
This doesn't feel like a real business card. And also, I mean, again, like I feel a little differently about Hayden Christensen. I thought, you know, when they go to Bethesda to go, like, he's like, I need to go see this conference. Like, where was this at?
Dude.
And he's basically trying to like lie, like, and that guy apparently that scene is very accurate because he said he just made it up as he went. When he got there, he saw a building that looked like a conference building and was like, yeah, that's where we were. He happened to see a restaurant across the street and like that's where we ate. He didn't plan out what he was going to show him. He just kind of was standing around there and like, all right, this is what I see and this is how I'm going to lie and see if it works. And of course it didn't.
The thing that's crazy though, the thing that's crazy is like when you think about a mind like that, like this is a guy that can fabricate anything from anything. Yeah. Like he's taking, oh, I wasn't at the conference was at this certain point, or like, oh, they let us in at 2:58 even though it was an early dinner and like they let us stay for a while. Like he is so quick on his toes. He has critical thinking. He has all these attributes that so many employers want, and yet he is using it to lie.
Yeah. I thought that was crazy too, because like the part of the lie that he could sell is what he would sell. So when he was talking about the restaurant and he's like, why don't you go in there and ask them if they would serve someone at 2:58 if they walk in at 2:58. Because like most restaurants, actually, if you did walk in at 2:58, they would probably serve you dinner.
If you have 10 people coming in for a big tip, like they probably would say yes.
So he knew exactly what part of the lie to try to sell to convince, but
he's a smart guy.
Chuck Lang was just too smart too, and like was like, I'm over. And I thought like Peter Sarsgaard and that whole scene, like how he's just growingly like getting more and more frustrated and not totally losing his cool first. Like when he's in that conference room, he's like 200 people are in here. And he's just like, yeah, like this is where it was, but people were like walking in and out. And then you see that guy at the front desk, like reception. He's like, can I help you? He's like, yeah, you can help me. And like, was there like a pure like conference here in the last 2 weeks? And he's like, no, because the place is closed on Sunday. And the look that he gives him when he was like, the place is closed on Sunday, like it was just like he stared daggers into Steven's heart because he was just like, this is falling apart for you, dude.
Okay, I think I'm gonna kind of walk myself back a little bit because like I'm trying to think of it in a sense of just as a viewer of how it's so obvious that Christensen's lying,
right?
But I think realizing it now as basically a colleague that becomes your boss,
right?
Who's trying to give you the benefit of the doubt, and he is basically kind of covering all of his tracks. Like I love the scene when. Basically, he's like, hey, come into my office. Let's check your sources. And he's like, oh, do you want me to leave? He's like, no, let's call him right now.
No, call him right now.
And then he's like calling them like in the office while he's there. And he's like, and Hayden Christensen's giving him excuses as he's doing it. The excuses right off the bat would give me a red flag. But I understand, like, as someone who used to be his work colleague, confidant, friend, like all these sort of things, like, I realize like how he would have given him sort of the benefit of the doubt. But like, as the time goes on, it was so obvious to me that Hayden Christensen's lying, and it just got drawn out for me a little bit too long. That he was like a little bit too forgiving. Like for me, in a realistic standpoint, that would have happened so quickly for me. It would have been like, hey, dude, I know something's wrong here. You need to tell me the truth or you're fired. I don't care what your colleagues think about you. I don't care what your colleagues think about me. I'm the editor. You're lying. Tell me the truth now. Let's go. And like that should have happened an hour before the movie ended.
By the way, not firing him, just suspending him for 2 years. That was like the initial
2 years. Suspending for 2 years is firing.
I always laugh whenever I see that because I'm thinking she's gonna write like 2 months.
For 2 years, and then she sends a sad face.
Sad face. She's like, I think I need to quit. But that's kind of like what she. Because she didn't love Chuck either. I mean, she was kind of like, hey, this guy's picking on him. And I think we've all kind of seen in our lives, we've met at least someone like that. That's like, oh, they're convincing to other people, like, hey, I don't think they're as great as you do. And like, I thought she played the part where when she's like, oh, he's absolutely devastated right now. And like, I just talked to him and he's like, of course he's like, Chuck's like,
he's
I don't care.
You can tell he's a like, dude, like at the end when he's taking the magazines off the shelf, and he's like, oh, I don't trust myself driving alone. He's like, okay.
Yeah, I thought that was
like, I know you're a liar. He's like,
yeah.
I actually that was one of my favorite scenes of the entire movie, where he was just like, he's like, I know you're fucking with me. I know for a fact that you've been lying to me this whole time. I'm not buying into your bullshit anymore. Oh, you think that you can manipulate me by saying that you're going to kill yourself because you're driving? Yeah. Go ahead, because I don't believe you. I don't believe you. Do your thing. Go ahead. I do like that because,
I did like that he said if you want to sit here to like get yourself together, that's fine. For a few minutes, but like I'm not going anywhere with you.
I'm not going anywhere with you.
Yeah, I thought that was really good. And I honestly thought
the only thing about that was like I actually don't think that scene was done well enough, because the sort of like voiceover of him reading over his
fake stories,
it didn't really give a sense of we knew they were fake. Like it was just basically reading the stories. Like I didn't really get a sense while watching it that like, oh, this story seemed fake because of this thing that he said. Like it was basically just him reading it, and as a viewer who had no clue necessarily of what
all these other things were,
of what all these other things have done, like that story was fake. Like that sort of montage didn't really hit with me. where I knew each sentence that he said in a specific article, like, oh, that was fake. And now we got to move on to the next one. Like, I love the fact that he's reading each one off the wall saying like, oh, like all of these articles are fake. Like that was a great realization for Sarsgaard. Like that was great. But as a viewer, it didn't really hit to me like each sentence that fucking Hayden Christensen said was actually fake. Like it actually didn't really hit with me that each thing that he said, like, because it still seems like a good journalistic article, like when they were when he was doing the voiceover. So that specific scene didn't really hit with me because it didn't seem like all those things were fake because of just the fact that he lied. Does that make sense?
No, it does make sense. I actually I can see what you're saying. And then thinking about looking at it in a different way, about how you interpreted the stuff with Hayden Christensen with Steven, and like you as a person, like you being like, hey, I would have realized this was bullshit earlier than
I would have called him out way earlier
than the people in the movie. And I know, and I wonder if that's hard too as like a viewer to be like, okay, maybe they were duped by it, and I get it, I guess, but you're like, I see right away.
I think they did a great job like portraying the fact that everyone in the office loved him and he was a great guy and everyone liked him. But even in the beginning, like him saying like, oh, is that midnight shade? Is that your lipstick? Midnight shade? Is that good? Like he seemed actually even creepy, not even like someone who actually knew who they were.
It feels fake. It still feels fake.
It already felt super fake, just like already off the bat. Like, oh, there's a baby shower. I wanted to give something to you. Or like, oh, like, and even like the scene where he had the party and the beers were labeled like A to B. Also, first of all, that's a great party trick. Like if you have beers
pretty good.
labeled, labeled like next time I throw a party, Gaius,
there
I'm
you go.
The beers. I'm labeling the beers
for sure.
A through P and P through Z.
There you go. That was perfect, actually.
That was actually kind of cool.
And he had that like Diet Coke set aside for her. Yeah.
But at the same time, it just didn't really feel realistic where he gave him that much leniency. Like it seemed like he was drawing out the fact that he was trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, where I mean, as a viewer, it was so obvious. I know they were trying to give that to me. But like, I don't know. It just felt to me that they were giving him too much of the benefit of the doubt when, as a viewer, I already didn't trust him from the beginning.
Right. Well, in the case of Chuck, is this like a situation of making sure you cross your T's and dot your I's before you actually do something? I mean, as an editor, he has to make sure that, all right, well, I suspect that he might be lying or that something's not right. I also think it's important to take account too that I think he did kind of get caught up in the office politics of people telling him like, if you let him go, like no one's gonna be here to write for the magazine. They all love him, and I think he was also very aware that they didn't love him. They already hated the fact that he replaced Michael Kelly. They probably thought he was like a snake about how he did it, even though he wasn't. It was, the guy offered him the job and he was like, all right, I'll take it.
I'll take it.
And it wasn't,
this is happening. You're the guy.
Yeah. He didn't go behind his back.
No, at that point.
Yeah. He didn't go behind his back. He didn't do anything like, shady to get the job.
Yeah.
And he knew that, but of course, like they don't know that. And they think that, this guy just stepped in and this person that they respected and, thinking back on it, maybe Michael Kelly should have been more observant to what, because I do like when he says that, like, you might want to go up there and read those, because I think a lot of these like went through and got published like when Michael Kelly was in charge, and that's when she gets pissed off at him, like, this is what this is about. And I do love that he tells her, like, after she was like, he wouldn't do something like this, and he's like, just imagine if this was someone you didn't know and if it was a stranger, like, what would you do? Like, if you were writing about him, like, you would like do everything you could to bury him.
Prove him wrong.
Like, you prove him wrong. So I did love that he also, in that moment of anger with her, also had respect for her too. He was like, you're a really smart reporter. Like, I don't know why you're not.
I like you as a reporter, as an employee.
Like, he's like, why aren't you like using that now? Because they were all like, definitely gaslighted all of them. Completely gaslight. Gosh. There's certain line drops in the movie though that crack me up because they're just so good. When he goes to the office and he was like, you fake George Sims, that was your brother, blah, blah, blah. And he's like going back and forth with him. And he's like, oh, those are all real people. And he was like, all right, now look me in the eye and say that again. And then he like looks at him and he's like, those are all real people. And you could tell in his face, he's like, dude, I know you're lying. And you just double down on it when I just gave you an out to like not do it.
Yeah.
And I thought that was like really good. And then when he's in the car with him when they're coming back, and he's like, I just want you to tell me the truth. He's like, can you do that? Like, are you capable of like even doing that?
The thing is about that scene, it's like I don't think that this movie portrayed their relationship enough to make me feel that he was giving him the benefit of the doubt more. You know what I mean? Where it's like,
you mean like early on when the
where it's like he gave him so many outs and gave him so many chances, where as a viewer I felt that like he should have fired him on the fucking spot. Like it just felt to me that their friendship hadn't really been dialed in enough
right
in the movie for me to really understand.
Well, I don't even think they were even friends. I mean, I
yeah,
guess. I mean,
exactly.
I don't
like,
think
you got like a 30-second scene of them like getting coffee together and him like maybe saying a comment across the room about pictures in the magazine. Like that's pretty much all you got about the fact that they had a relationship before. So I think that they really didn't give enough for me to give Sarsgaard enough of a reason to give him all of this time to kind of like come clean. Like and so for me, like that was frustrating to watch because like there was I would say at least the last 40 minutes of the movie I was like, just fucking fire him and call him out. Like that was basically
like a call it a day.
I was like, he's a liar. He's a liar. Call him out. Come on. He's just excuse after excuse after excuse.
Yeah. I think it was interesting when they were in front of the restaurant and he had yelled at him when he was like, I didn't do anything wrong. And he's like, I just wish you would like stop saying that. And then he pauses and he still goes like, hey, anyone could have made a mistake. So he's even then
he's
trying to like give him another out. And like the fact that he doesn't use that out is so, I mean, not frustrating, but I think it's funny that he's like, you're supposed to support me. You're my editor.
It was frustrating.
You're supposed to support me. And he just yells at him. He's probably like, dude, now I'm done. Like,
dude, it was frustrating, man. It was frustrating.
And then that fucking car ride was probably awkward as fuck. If that happened in real life on the way back, when he like turns the radio on, he's like, "No, turn it off." Like he's like,
dude, if someone did that to me, I would look over and be like, "What's the deal? What's going on?"
Yeah. I was like that. It was just so like. There's some scenes that are just so painfully awkward because it's like, oh, I wouldn't know what I would do in that situation.
The thing is,
like,
I actually welcome that in a movie because that should be what the realistic version of that conversation should be.
Yeah,
like having that awkward silence and I have that like, dude, we need to talk about something, but I need you to talk first. I need you to come clean.
Yeah,
like that is actually necessary in Sarsgaard defense. Like in the car, like imagine like you get in the car, you know this motherfucker is lying.
At this
you
point,
know
it's all
you know this dude is being a bitch, and then he just turns on the radio just to like jam out. I'd be like, turn that shit off, dude.
Like turn it off.
Tell me what's going on. How dare you?
And then he almost got him wrecked because he wasn't paying
and then
attention.
He runs a stop sign, almost gets T-boned
because he was trying to lie more. And I
would have been like, dude, I love that. He's like, pull over right now. Tell me what's going on. And he still lies. And then he still lies. And I think that shows sort of what I love about the character of Steven is like, he is so smart, but he is also so naive in the fact that he thinks that lying is going to make him a better person and more respected. Whereas like this lie of, I have notoriety. I can write things that are great. I can do things that are good for people. I write things that people want to hear. I think that is his expectation of what is like wanted by the masses. But in reality, like if it's not real, no one's going to respect you. And he doesn't realize that.
Yeah, at the end of the day, they're not. And I want to ask you this, since this is the one criticism of the movie, even though it got really good reviews, a lot of the criticism is that they wish they would have dived into his psyche a bit more and figured out why he was doing the things that he was doing.
Yeah.
I don't even fully think everyone involved in that story in real life knows why he completely did what he did.
No.
And I don't even think he fully knows why he did what he did. I don't think it's as simple as like, I told a lie and I fed off the energy of like selling that initial story. Like I lied about my first story. I added some color to it. Everyone
It's
loved
lie
it.
that's based on a lie that's based on a lie that's based on a lie. Like it is just compounding.
Right. And like you said, like if you can fake that many, because I mean he wrote 41 total, he faked 20 something of them.
He's smart. He's a smart dude.
There also was some good ones that you didn't fake that probably were like, oh, they were probably fine. And yeah, but the movie, I mean, the movie isn't long enough to really go into his mindset.
I'll tell you this. I think that this movie, if it was me remade today, what I would do, because this is in a time, 1998, dude, therapy is not like cultured. It's not like it's still taboo at that point. Like if you go to therapy, you're like considered crazy in the 90s. Like you're considered like, oh, like you need help.
Right.
Whereas nowadays it's just like a normal thing where
it's a normal thing.
You need to talk about some things and get some stuff off your chest. So I think like honestly, this movie would be better nowadays if instead of the classroom sort of narrative that is the movie that is started with, it would be better if it was with a therapist and he was kind of talking about why he was doing these things. Yeah. Like that would be way better than him talking to a fake classroom about why he's proud of the things he's done, which could also be a therapeutic thing to talk about. Like if he's proud of it, obviously he thinks he's a good storyteller. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think the fake classroom stuff that kind of goes throughout the movie works for the movie because I mean it works for him as a character being like, oh, he's so used to he makes up this whole scenario where he gets to go to this class and like talk to people about how he's a great writer. I do love the way it's used at the end though, where they're congratulating Chuck about like, hey, we read those stories too now, we believe you. They already have that like written letter to their readers already written out,
all signed.
And I love when he says like, I thought I was gonna have to explain this to all of you, and they already were like, no, we basically without saying it, we
thank you for telling us that we were wrong.
Yeah, and then applauding for him while Steven's getting fake applause from the fake classroom in his head. I just thought that was a really cool like to show like their stories were pretty much like intersected almost. Like if Steven was a good person and was didn't lie, he probably could be an editor if he wanted to be. And it seems like I like when you said they showed Chuck's wife and kid, I think that also was to show like he had something real, and then they would also show that Steven really didn't have anything real at all. He had no real relationships with anyone.
Didn't see him by himself at all, ever.
Yeah, and like all those people that were his friends, like I mean, I guess Caitlin the blonde, Chloe, is
read through his mail and tried to call him out.
It's the closest I would guess would be like one of his friends, but like everyone else seemed like they just kind of hero worshipped him and weren't really like his friends. And like he does one really shitty thing too when that guy goes to the office. He's like, oh, what are you doing? And he's wanting to see if he read his article yet, and he had like ripped his article apart, like he had totally destroyed it, and he's throwing things in his face that he is also doing as a liar when he's like, you have to make sure you have like it's solid, you're going to check all your facts, and like it's just it's that monologue part frustrated me.
You're such a hypocrite, you're such a hypocrite.
Yeah, I was like, and that is like the evil part of that, where like that you're doing something wrong, and then someone is like, hey, I want help, like can you help me like
he write like this article? Up to this guy, he looks up to him, and guess what? Christensen knows it. He looks at him and he's like, I have so many articles in print. You should know that I'm the one who should be kind of revered. And he uses it to his advantage.
And then when he realizes being too mean, though, he's like, hey, why don't you bring me your notes and we'll go over it together, because there's stuff in it that I actually like. So then he like cleans it up and like tries. I mean, watching someone like manipulate someone like that. I mean, I know it's just a movie, but like it felt like in real time.
To watch, man.
It was like really like, and you're right, because he is so obviously a liar. It's not like I feel like if he was in our, do you think we're meant to know that?
Do you think we're meant to know that as an audience? Like, do you think we're meant to know that he's a liar, or do you think they were trying to hide it? Because if it was trying to be a realistic adaptation where it's like we're not really sure, they could have shown him in a very different light. But I think that they showed him so obviously as a liar that they wanted us to know.
Well, that's an interesting outlook. So if you have a movie that's based on a true story, do you have to assume that the audience seeing it is aware of said true story, or do
True.
you also have to, or do you also have to be aware that some of the audience isn't, and they might want to be like, oh, I
I
wonder
didn't
if
know.
he is.
I
I
mean,
wonder if he is
this
or
is
isn't.
as a viewer coming in. I didn't know about this story. So like I'm coming in and I automatically see it. I know he's a liar.
Right.
And so I think that the director was directly trying to tell us that from the get-go. But I think it was a little bit done too much because they could have done it in a
Like
more
too on
subtle way
Too on the nose.
that made us actually like him more, because right off the bat, I felt like he was unlikable.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things that you have to ask yourself, if he was actually in our real personal lives, would would you and I be like, I don't really want to hang out with him. Like there's something
The thing is,
there's something off.
Dude, if he like sort of nabbed and coerced all these people, he was so charismatic. He had to have been. Like
Yeah, I
all
guess
of these
so.
people must have really liked him.
No, they
To
did. I mean,
have
they
his
were
back
they are.
all this way.
I did read that a lot of the real people who did, even up to a point where it was very obvious that he was doing something wrong, they did feel very hurt by the fact that he did lie to them for so long, because they did, a lot of them really liked him a lot.
Yeah.
And they asked if he was did he have any regret, and he did say that he did. But of course, like what we're watching is this is an archival interview on like 60 Minutes, so he's doing this on he's doing it on TV, and it's like, are you really apologizing to the people you hurt by first apologizing to them on like a TV interview? Like, do you really mean it? And also, like, can we really trust anything that you say? Because like,
because you've already lied to us.
You've already lied so much. Like, yeah, it's crazy.
That's fucking tough.
But I get what you're saying though, like, because you didn't know the real story really at all. So as a viewer, do you have to be like, oh, I wonder if there's some truth to like what he's doing, or if you're supposed to know right away that, oh no, this guy is clearly making stuff up? Because because the first story, like, the spring breakdown one, the first story that we see, that he's supposedly at, at the young Republicans convention or whatever, it's presented in a way where it feels like it's supposed to be real. Like it doesn't feel like something he's made up. But I mean, you learn right away then, like the whole issue with the mini fridge, when they're like, hey, it says that hotel doesn't have mini fridges, and then he goes back and creates a sob story about like, oh, like I didn't see the mini fridge, and like there were just bottles on the ground, like they actually like rented it, and then Michael's like, okay, well that's not really a big deal whether or not it was actually in the room or if they rented it for the room. Yeah. And he was able to like kind of weasel his way out of it.
But yeah, it was true. It was true.
Right.
So I actually think they do a great job in this. Is like the first story they show where he's like present as a reporter in a different situation than The Office. Right. It seems realistic. And I think that they do a great job of showing that. And then they transition into situations where it's like, why would a reporter be there?
Yeah, the hack Heaven one is like
the hack Heaven one. He's sitting at the end of that table, and I'm like, why? Why would he be there?
The whole
that
situation
makes no sense.
Is like ridiculous. That's like, oh, that has to be a lie.
And he's just looking there, like looking back and forth, writing down. Like that makes no sense. Why a reporter would be there during a legal discussion?
I also like that they don't. Even though this is a story that he's made up in his head, I'm glad that they don't go as far to show those fake people interacting with him, because because that means that like that fully discloses that like this guy was never there. These people don't exist. So I thought that was a good creative choice, not to have fake interactions with, at least in that story. It was
just a story in his mind, and we saw it once, and that was it.
Because I kind of feel like I couldn't tell with like the Young Republican piece if maybe part of that was true and he made up other parts of it, because like they did say some of his stories were half truths and half fabrication.
I mean, I think it started as half fabrication. It had to have been. Most of his beginning articles were great. I think the ones that were true were probably in the beginning of his writing.
Right.
And then as it started to become like more political, maybe he was like, I'm not getting a lot of viewership or readership, whatever it is. He started writing things that maybe got a little bit more attention, and then he started realizing he could get away with it. And then that started to become a situation where he basically just started fabricating his own stories. And
Yep.
I think they do a good job of showing how in his mind, like he was there, and it makes sense to him. I mean, his description of the stories is very detailed, which makes it seem realistic to the person he's telling it to.
And honestly, even though the story is ridiculous, if you were in the position where this kid, hacker, he would act like that. He would act like an immature brat that says like, "Oh, I want an Xbox. I want Playboy magazine. I want Penthouse. I want this." Like the kid might do that. So like you're like, all right,
Yeah.
there is a semblance of truth to maybe what he's saying, but it is so like I'm trying to put myself in like a writer's room with someone like that, and if
Yeah.
I would be like, that, because they even commented on the fact that like, how does he like find these people? Like, where is he going? Like,
Well,
to, like,
also,
you know,
the thing is, everyone in the room is also laughing. Everyone's accepting the story. So
Right.
it's like, it's kind of group mentality where, do you laugh? Do you question it? Like, do you say like, oh, like, how long were you there? Like, who'd you talk with? Can I talk to him too? I'd love to do a side piece on this.
right.
Like, does it differ? It seems like everyone in the room is basically just saying like, we mostly have boring content. You're bringing something fun to the table. We're going to react to that in a certain way, but we're not going to question it. And so like in a digital age where you can't really fact check, there's no pictures, like we mentioned,
Yeah.
like you just kind
And
of
the
take him for who he is. Like why would you think he's lying? Like everything is so
right,
detailed.
and the way that he dumbs it down when he sells it, and because he does this twice in the movie, and then he kind of goes like, "Oh, it's probably really silly anyway.
I hated that.
I'm probably gonna kill it," and like that was just something he would do to like to manipulate them. Like, "Oh, it's not that great. I don't know
Yeah.
if I'm gonna run with
It's like,
it."
I don't know, like this seems kind of silly. Like maybe I shouldn't pursue it, even though I've done
Yeah,
all this legwork and all this crazy work for it.
yeah, and crazy dude, man. It's a
Yeah,
really
dude. I mean,
interesting
the thing that's
character study.
we've talked about this a lot. It's like characters that are inherently bad at the core, but they have these smarts and this intelligence to like
Yeah,
create these lies.
well, I guess you. I guess
That's
you
more
kind of
like lies are more exhausting than truth. Like it's crazy that like
well.
everything, if you're constantly lying about something, you're always worrying. Like
Well,
why create this
someone,
fabrication?
I forget where I heard it, but I think it's a TV show, or I don't know where. Maybe it sounds like something like my mom would say, or maybe she stole it from something. I don't
Yeah.
know, but it's like I've always heard the whole thing like, you don't have like, if you don't have to like have a good memory if you tell the truth.
Yeah.
So like if you're trying to lie, then that means you're always like, oh, like
Keeping up with something.
which part of the lie did I tell you, and
Yeah.
like
How
do you
far
keep it
along?
going?
How much do you know?
How much do you actually know? And I feel like this guy, I mean, by the end, when he takes him to where the conference allegedly was, and he probably forgot everything that he wrote in that piece. Like I don't really remember what I said.
No
Or like,
wonder he's going home to check his notes all the time. He's got to like check up on his lies.
and by the way, too, if you were an editor and you saw notes like that, you probably would take them at face value. Like that's a lot of fucking work. I mean,
You're
like
like,
you
dude,
to
this is
you're
like
killing it.
3 binders worth.
Like handwritten. I guess you kind of answered the
Like, and
question.
the thing, like I will say this again, detailed notes. Like oh, there was someone smoking behind me. I could tell. I know what a Marlboro Red smells like. It was a Marlboro Red. Check her if you want to
Yeah.
buy her receipts. Like you're doing some detailed work to get these people to believe your lie. Like you have to remember everything.
Yeah, that's true. I guess you kind of maybe already answered it, but at the end of by the end of the movie, do you feel that he is a bad person, or is he just like a deeply troubled person?
No. He's a bad person. Like I think that he specifically told these lies to make himself feel better about himself. And then when he got caught, he used manipulation to make himself feel like to others, like I need help. I can't be alone.
Yeah, he uses relationships
is
with those people
that is
to like,
horrible manipulation to say like, oh, I can't be alone. I need someone next to me.
yeah.
And then you kind of have this trust factor, like no, he's a bad person. He completely manipulated everyone around him to make them like him, even though that's not who he truly was. So
I think you get a sense of how like I feel bad saying evil. I mean, I don't know if that's the right word, but
he's
when
not evil. He's not trying to hurt. He's not trying to like kill people. Evil is more. Yeah, evil is worse.
But when
But
he
like
tells
he's
him,
just bad.
Yeah, when he tells him like I feel like I'm really gonna do something with myself, and he
Yeah.
like looks at him like okay, and then
And I love
when
how he calls his
and,
bluff. He's like,
and when
fuck
he
you.
says it, but when he says it the second time, like, did you hear me?
Yeah.
Like the kind of like he loses it a bit, like, hey, like, did
Yeah.
you hear what I said?
Yes.
And I thought that was really good. I was like, oh well, I mean,
He's
we're
like,
gonna
wait,
have
you're
like
not. He's like, wait, you're not gonna respond to the fact that I might kill myself. And he's like, no,
no,
do it.
if you need to like take a moment, you can take a
Yeah,
moment.
chill, relax. I'm gonna call your bluff. I love that actually. Like
And
you
he's
could
like,
tell that
dude, just
entire
like
scene where he's using one of his techniques to be like, oh, you're gonna feel sorry for me. You're gonna take care of me. And then
he's
the
like,
editor's like, no. Sarsgaard's like, no, fuck you. I know what you do. You lie. And then he has to question it. And then I think that's when he falls apart.
yeah, I think so too. And I also love by the time like he goes to the office to tell him that, hey, I think he faked all those people, and he tells him that you have to get out of the office and like give me your security card. And then he's trying to take stuff with him. He's like, oh, can I take my? He's like, no, leave it all here. If you touch it, I'm gonna call security. And he tries to like turn his computer off while he just shut it down so he can get rid of whatever he was trying to fake on that too. And he's
Yep.
like, no, like don't touch anything. Like I think Peter Sarsgaard is like the best actor in the movie.
Yeah.
I think that he does
100%.
a really, really good job. And I think we'll have to agree to disagree on Hayden Christensen. I think he does a good job in the second half more than the first half. And
Honestly, can I say I think that my perspective has been skewed by Star Wars and Jumper and everything else that I've seen him in. And it's just hard for me to not see that in him. And his line delivery is flat and not really the way that I like. I just don't believe him as an actor. I see him as Hayden Christensen who tried to be Anakin.
You know what's interesting though is that overall I feel like you like the movie.
Dude,
but like it's interesting when like you don't like the lead. Like I mean, like it's like he's in so much of the movie. I thought like that would hurt the watching experience of it to be like, oh well, he's kind of a problem. Like I don't really like the way he's delivering this line or doing that.
But the subject content is so great that like it is so relatable, especially to nowadays where everyone's lying about fucking everything online. So like I really love, dude. I think Frank Azaria is one of the best characters in the movie as well. Best I don't want to say cameo, but just
not a big part either. Yeah, he has more than Rosario Dawson, but like not a big role.
Dude, Rosario got screwed on that deal. Whatever she got paid, like she needs like that was not like I thought she could have done so much more in that.
And you want more. I mean, she's the kind of actress you want more of because she's really naturally good in the stuff that she's in.
She seems realistic.
She always feels believable. Playing whoever she's playing. Like I bought her as like working for that like digital magazine.
All she had to do was put like little square glasses on, and Gaius is like, "Yeah, I believe her.
I believe her. Yeah, I did.
She's a tech.
I love what she asked. I love what she asked for. What she asked for is like byline.
Rosario, like, you can be whoever you want for me. You can be whoever you want for me. I believe.
Hey, she was good. I believed it. When she asked for his byline, he's like, no, and then she kind of loses it, and she's like, well, I could be the one getting famous if I didn't go to the dentist. So she's like, shit, and he just kind of like, whoa, like, calm down.
Yeah,
like, yeah, I don't know. It is weird that it's such a small role, but I guess I don't know. She was in a decent amount of stuff back then, so
I think I love that part of the movie a lot too. Was like there were some times where
a lot of familiar faces,
but like if you're working a specific corporate job or like something where there's a hierarchy, like if you have a good boss who backs you, even when their boss is kind of coming down on their neck. Yeah, like, there is something special about that. So I think that aspect was really shown greatly in this movie, where you have a boss who's willing to back his employees even on his own neck, and he got fired for it, and so that's why they were loyal to him. They respected him. They're like, you had us until the end, and you took the blame for it. Yeah, and like I've only had like I've worked some corporate jobs, only corporate since I graduated college, and like I have maybe one, maybe two bosses that I know would do the same thing for me. So it's like I understand that aspect where. And I loved Hayden. That was my favorite line of his of the entire movie, was where he's hypothetically speaking to the class about, I hope you have a chance to have one boss or anything like that. Like if you have one boss, I hope you have that chance throughout the entire your career. out of all the bosses, I hope you have one that will back you no matter
Thank
what.
you.
And
Honestly,
yeah,
that was probably the only
yeah.
real honest thing that he said. I
Yeah.
mean, I mean, even
Yeah,
though that was
no,
in
no,
it, even though,
and yeah.
even though that was in his head, it wasn't real. But like, I
Yeah.
thought that was like the most. I think he did like. I don't think he with Michael Kelly. I don't think he liked him because he could dupe him. I actually think he did respect him and like him as an editor. That's what's always weird, interesting with characters like this, where it's like how much of what they're presenting is
real.
I have empathy and I care
Yeah.
and like and how much of it is so selfish and and a little self-entitled and narcissistic, like how much of that is. That's why I think the movie itself is a really good, interesting character study. The first time I saw it when it came out, I thought it was pretty interesting. I love, of course, the journalism aspect of it. I also don't think this could ever happen today anymore.
No,
really,
this is a splice in time. You know how much I love movies that are just like a moment in time.
Because they run our stories through stuff all the time. Like the one of our editor-in-chiefs for MovieWeb is like they run our like feature pieces to check and see if like AI wrote any of it, or if we plagiarize anything, or that's why it goes to an editor. I mean, that's why, and that's the good thing about having one that you can trust, because if you do trust your editor and they trust you, usually they're going to be like, I trust this enough to really not check it, but they really do have to, even if they like you a lot and want you. They're like, hey, like you've been working for us a long time. I feel like I don't need to like double check your work, but like they really have to. I mean, because
100%.
Anyone can make a mistake. And
I will say this too, like I'm not trying to scare you or anything, but it's like, imagine if you made up a story now. Like it would be fact checked immediately and falsified within a minute and a half, and you'd be fired, and your credibility would be ruined.
This
true. Guy got away with almost 30 articles of that. There's no way that would ever happen today.
There are some editors, and we have one right now that even has issues with us using like Grammarly for stuff to check, like spell check and everything, because it can be read when they check it. It can be read as something that's like plagiarized. So like it's a interesting position to be in. Like I just try to learn what they want and how to give it to them, basically.
Yeah.
And once you do, it's like, all right, well, you know what they expect of you. They know your style. They in the case of like this industry, like they're like, hey, he knows enough about it where of course they're gonna check it because they have to. Because I know some writers that get insulted by that, but it's like, their publication, whatever it is, if you happen to make a mistake like that, it not only comes down on you, the writer, but it comes down on them because you were my editor-in-chief. You were supposed to check it. You didn't. And it slipped through the cracks. So not only do you get in trouble, but, your bosses get in trouble. And then your trade publication gets like caught up in that too, and then your readers don't trust it. So so
one of the things that I'll say about one of the things that I love about you and writers and what I respect about you guys so much is you guys have a way of using your style, like Gaius, your style on all the platforms, all the websites, every single freelance job that you do has your voice. It has the same cadence that you have as a writer. But you get to use that and you get to describe what you watch in the same way but different almost every time. I think that's what the thing that distinguishes writers the most is like I have a hard time trying to like describe a fun party that I was at that I also didn't describe the same fun party that I was at a month before. Where it's like I use the same words, I use the same descriptions, I use the same people. Like what I love about writers and what I love about your writing especially is that you have a way of describing things that you enjoy in a different way every time, but I can tell that it's from your perspective. And so that's what I don't, that's, I mean, going back to our SAG and WGA strike, but what I want to say is that I think that this movie does a great job describing certain things that I have felt specifically about like journalism and lying and relationships, and they've done it in a way that I haven't been able to describe. So I think that this is a great representation of that.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's crazy to think as well if that one person at Forbes didn't go like, hey, like why didn't you get this story? Like how did like the New Republic, who doesn't specialize in any like digital media or anything like that, how did they get this and you did it? If like someone hadn't taken the time to even question it, he probably could have gotten away with doing that a lot longer than he did. And
Years.
And because no one at his publication, I think, would have really fact checked. I mean, it's possible that Chuck would have, if he would have thought like, okay, these stories are getting like outrageous. But if there was no
leadership changed it all.
Yeah, if there was no third party to go like, hey, I think something's up, I don't know if he would have really gotten caught as quickly as he did.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is interesting to think how it's, it is like a really slice. Like, I mean, the movie only takes place over not even that many days, as far less than a week. And like, of course, like he written for them because he worked for them in real life from 95 to 98. And basically,
I mean, it also shows like their age too. It says in the beginning of the movie, the average age was what, 26?
Yep. Oh, and they had to add that because when I guess when they screened it the first time, the audience was like,
they're like, these actors are what, 40?
Well, they didn't believe that anyone that young worked for like a magazine like that. They're like, I don't think anyone that young. And then they were like, no, okay, I guess we have to put it in here that like they actually
preface the narration. And dude, you know how I feel about narration. Like if you start off with narration, I'm like, I expect a lot. And
you're like,
to have the character that I'm actually in the end supposed to hate start narrating, I'm not a big fan of that.
Yeah, I know. Well, I remember we watched 21. That was one of the big complaints you had about
narration. Vegas, like explaining things to me that I already know. I don't need 30 seconds of narration to show me and tell me what I just saw over the last 15 minutes.
Yeah, I agree. Well, closing up, I do have some, I guess, fun facts about the movie, but as far as like your final thoughts on it overall,
I thought it was a great movie. I'd give it probably like a 7.3.
Okay, it has a 7.1 on IMDb, so that's not too far off. Yeah,
I'd give it a 7.3. I just like Hayden. Just really kind of I struggle watching him act in anything besides Star Wars because it's like,
well, you like him in like Revenge of the Sith, right? I mean, like he's decent. I'm trying to like give him credit.
The thing is, I give him credit, but it's just tough for me because his delivery is always the same, and I just don't believe him as an actor.
See, I used to blame it on George Lucas's writing, but like this is different, and you felt like he was still flat. I can't defend Jumper, or he hasn't really done a lot. Takers, I forgot that
Takers is also awful. It's like if T.I. out acts you, like that's saying something. If T.I. out acts you, then you're in trouble.
Poor Hayden Christensen.
Also, he's wearing a fedora in that entire movie. Take it off, bro.
He does. You know what though? I can't even like talk shit because I used to wear fedoras back in the day, so I can't really talk too much smack.
We'll leave it at that. We'll leave that for another podcast where I can make fun of you for wearing a fedora. But we'll move on from that.
You know what I will say for everyone listening who hasn't seen the movie, I think he puts in an A effort though. Like he's trying to do something different.
I gave it above a C, man. Like I think the movie, the content especially, is very important and very like honestly, it relates to today. So I think that it's a great movie to watch, especially today. It still relates. I'm not a huge fan of Hayden Christensen. That shouldn't deter you from watching this movie. I think it's a great find. But it just like there are some things that like it's obvious to me that he's lying, and I know that that's the directorial aspect of it. They're trying to get us to understand that, but I had some issues with the movie, but overall, I think that it's a great movie to dissect, and I still gave it over a C, so I'll give it that.
So, and I think also too, like you said, the subject matter is interesting enough. like, you know, you can write a movie about journalism and make it interesting and
Yeah, it inspired
kinda,
so many movies. The Post, like Spotlight, like everything.
and kind of thrilling. And also, you know, you could stay for the Sarsgaard because he's actually really good. I think like I think that character, well, it's hard. Well, he's a real guy, but like the way that the role was written, I think he hit all the right notes. And
100%.
I like how you go from being like, oh, that guy's kind of a curmudgeon, like I wouldn't want to be his friend, to like by the end of it, you're like, oh, like the dude actually had like a lot of integrity, and that's why he was the way he was.
Yeah.
And he believed in the magazine. He probably really cares about writing, and you know, like because he even mentions that to her like towards the end when he was like, we have to apologize to all these people on Monday. Like there's so many people that we have to, you know, come clean to. Like we can't like.
And the fact that he even thought that as an editor is great, because a lot of other editors would have been like, oh, like let's just hide it,
throw him to the wolves,
throw him to the wolves, just be like, oh, this guy like either completely disregard it or hide it or anything. But he's like, hey, let's just come clean, say that this was a bad apple, and move on.
Yeah, I agree. And I just, you know, as a writer, it's like any movie about journalism, I think it's interesting. And I think it's pretty
in my top 5 favorite movies.
That is,
so,
and that's
like,
that subject matter is crazy good too. I mean, it's really compelling and powerful. And you know, this movie was basically about the act of journalism and like what goes into selling the stories. And of course, Spotlight has that added layer of the church and all that stuff too. But like it's still to be able to write a movie that's exciting, where it's basically just a lot of people sitting around the newsroom. And it's just dialogue, basically. I think that's a testament. I think Billy Ray, as a writer on this, I think did a good job selling the atmosphere, selling the world, selling the characters that like inhabit that world.
Yeah,
and I think they all felt really authentic for the most part. They felt like you would meet them in a writer's room like that.
Oh yeah, 100%. Completely agree.
And now for some. All right, I already listed this one. Yes, many members of the test audience didn't believe the story was true. They thought no real life magazine would have so many journalists in their early to mid 20s, even though the New Republic did. And then that's why they added the place card to the opening of the film and say the median age of journalists working for the New Republic was 26. Melanie Lynskey, who is the brunette, she plays Amy Brand, had no costume changes. She wore the same outfit throughout the whole movie, and I don't even remember. I guess she does. I didn't really pay attention to what she was wearing.
I really like that actress. I think she's Melanie Lynskey.
Oh, she's great.
Have you seen what's it called? The one with Daniel Radcliffe?
No, not yet.
You should definitely watch that. It's a good one.
I've heard pretty good things about it. Billy Ray initially had a very hard time convincing the real life Michael Kelly to assist in the production of the movie. Kelly was editor of the New Republic when many of Stephen Glass's fraudulent articles were published, and he was very embarrassed about them. Ray eventually persuaded Kelly to help him by telling him that he was approaching this story as a journalist who wanted the script to be as factually accurate as possible. That's good.
So he lied to get the script.
Well, he didn't lie. He
played the character perfectly.
Charles Lane, who was the real life editor of the New Republic, was invited by writer-director Billy Ray to observe filming of some of the movie's scenes. The one scene shot while he was in attendance was the one where the New Republic writers badmouth Lane behind his back. That's great.
Oof. Brutal.
Hannah Rosen, a real life journalist who was a colleague of both Stephen Glass and Charles Lane, worked as an advisor to writer-director Billy Ray. The character of Caitlin was based loosely on Hannah. Steve Zahn.
I love the word loosely. Sorry, I love the word loosely.
How loosely
is it? So often, and it could mean like it was just like maybe half their name was right, and then they could base the entire character.
Or it was she was blonde.
Yeah, exactly.
That was it. Steve Zahn contacted the real Adam Pennenberg to get details on his character. This led to a comedic moment when Pennenberg visited the set and found that he and Zahn were dressed identically on the same day.
Oh.
Oh Jesus. Yeah. Oh, and then they do. Yeah, the real life Michael Kelly died a few months before the movie actually came out, and while reporting in Iraq. So that's
Jesus.
And Maggie Gyllenhaal was originally cast as Amy Brand, but was replaced by Melanie Lynskey because Gyllenhaal left the project due to scheduling conflicts. What, she be big then? Where she would take like a small role like that?
Lynskey did way better.
Yeah, I liked her. Rosario Dawson's character of Andy Fox was loosely based on someone else.
Loosely.
on a male reporter named Malik from New Delhi, India. Malik covered city conductors for Forbes and will later go on to write for Business 2.0 before starting a blog covering broadband called Giga. But yeah, her character is based on a man.
Oh
loosely.
my God.
Loosely based on a man. And originally Greg Kinnear was cast to play Charles Lane, but backed up to scheduling conflicts and they cast Peter Sarsgaard. I can't see anyone else but Peter Sarsgaard.
No, Peter did a great job.
Playing it really well. And then like we mentioned, the movie premiered at the Toronto Film Festival to great reviews, but it only made $2.9 million worldwide on a $6 million budget. So they describe it as a commercial failure.
It's not described, it is literally a commercial failure. Lost $3.5 million.
But it has a 92% on Rotten Tomatoes. There's that. The New York Times said it was a serious, well-observed examination of the practice of journalism and an astute and surprisingly gripping genre, and said a more showingly ambitious film might have tried to delve into Glass's personal history in search of an explanation for his behavior, or to draw provocative connections between that behavior and cultural and political climate of the times. Such a movie would also have been conventional and ultimately false. Mr. Ray knows better than to sensationalize a story about the dangers of sensationalism. Shattered Glass is good enough to be true. That's actually a pretty good review of that.
Yeah, it's a great review.
And then yes, Peter Sarsgaard actually got most of the film's praise. He was nominated for a Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actor and an Independent Spirit Award for Best Supporting Actor. A lot of people thought he was going to pull out a Oscar nomination in that same category, but I think the movie itself was just not seen enough. Didn't make a lot of money and a little too small. Hayden Christensen also got good notices for this movie too. Apparently the only one he's gotten good notices for. And I also always like to find one negative review. This is from the Village Voice. They dismissed the film as self-important yet insipid and asked the question, Shattered Glass begs a larger question. What sort of culture elevates Glass for his entertainment value, punishes him for being too entertaining, rewards his notoriety, and then resurrects him again as a moral object lesson for this film? I guess they had issues with, essentially giving him more attention by making a movie about him. But
I mean, I actually kind of agree with that, where it's like they kind of throw the question around whether or not he's a hero or not multiple times in the movie.
Right. If he has there's no justification in my eyes for anything that he did whatsoever. And then just for about Sarsgaard, they said USA Today said he deserves more credit than he'll probably get for his multi-layered performance. And then Premiere Magazine said it's Peter Sarsgaard as the editor who serves Glass his just desserts, who walks away with the movie, metamorphosizing his character's stiffness into a moral indignation that's jolting and finally invigorating. It's actually a good review of his character too.
Great review too. Yeah.
But yeah, solid movie, I thought. And now we have some questions, which we haven't done these in a very long time, I suppose. And by the way, how Shattered Glass kind of came up again, even though I did want Owen to watch the movie. Our last movie, Overlord, was co-written by Billy Ray, and Billy Ray wrote directed this. And that's how I saw, when I saw the name, I was like, wait, didn't he do like clicked it? He was like, yep, he did Shattered Glass. So that's how I picked that for the next movie. Totally different
for the win.
totally different films. Totally different movies, but whatever. All right. We got something coming from Geek Vibes Nation. Owen,
Vibes.
Owen, what movie have you seen in theaters the most? I'm guessing more than one time. Is there any movie that you went to go see multiple times in theaters?
Wow. Okay. To be honest, the most time that I usually go see the movies is when I really want to go see a movie. And back in the day when before COVID, I went to go see it. I was a broke college kid or a broke high school student. So I think
So you're not going multiple times.
So I typically would watch it one time, either on a date or just with some friends, and that's when I would go see it, and I wouldn't dare to spend another $5 to go see it again. But I mean, in terms of the one I've probably seen the most in theaters, to be honest, The Incredibles with my parents, because my parents loved that movie. I think I saw that movie 4 times in theaters.
Oh wow,
Yeah,
that's crazy. That's
because
crazy.
my parents wanted to see it again and again, and it's still my favorite Pixar movie to this day.
Nice. So I've never topped 3. I've seen a lot of movies like 3 times in theaters. I've never gone more than 3, but I've seen a lot 3 times. Actually, all 3 of the Dark Knight trilogy, I saw all those 3 times in theaters. And it's always so
I did see
random,
Godzilla twice in theaters because I saw it once with friends and then once with my girlfriend, and I could not stand that movie. The first Godzilla with Bryan Cranston, I couldn't stand that movie after a while.
Oh well, it's very slow, and there's very little Godzilla in it for a movie called Godzilla. There's not a whole lot.
Exactly.
Podcast father for Gaius, do you like writing features or news more?
Ooh.
Features for sure. Even though I don't mind covering news, because the thing I like about covering news is that I have to be quick and get it out fast.
Yeah.
And there's like a kind of like rush of getting it out fast. Like, oh, can we get it out before everyone else?
Anyone else?
At least within our like kind of independent circles, because we're like,
I feel like you guys did that with Ezra Miller.
Yeah, we did a lot.
You guys had a lot of Ezra Miller like first news.
A lot of that stuff. So but features, it's more of opinion pieces, so I like doing those more. I think I can be more creative doing features, and so far for Movie Web, everything I've pitched they've taken, so I haven't been turned down yet. I'm waiting for the moment where they're like, hey, that was not going to work. I
don't think it's going to happen, man. You're selling yourself short.
Has not happened yet, and I appreciate it, because that was one of the things they told me when I started. They were like, hey, it's okay if your first few pitches don't go through, like, sometimes and all of them have. So yeah, knock on wood, we'll see if I can.
Well, hey, I'm not knocking on wood, I'm just saying, Gaius, you're a great writer, that's why.
Well, thank you, I appreciate that for sure. But yeah, they're different. I don't want to do one without the other, but yeah, I do like doing features a bit more, so I can like stretch creatively a bit. And then Lula Maybell on Twitter for both of us. Do we have any movies that we're looking forward to coming out at the end of the year? I think we kind of talked about that. That's kind of left, I guess, to come out. Killers of the Flower Moon and probably Dune Part 2 are the ones I'm looking the most forward to. I don't know if it's different for you, but I think those are the 2 I'm looking most forward to that wrap up this year.
Yeah, those ones are, I mean, Killers of the Flower Moon, I read the book. I encourage all our listeners to read the book. It's a quick read. It's probably a couple hundred pages. It's the real story. It's fantastic. If you read that and then watch the movie, it's going to be an even better experience. I promise you that. Gaius, please read it. It's great.
Oh, you have it, right?
Yeah, I do have it. So if you want to borrow it, just come on over and snag it.
There we go.
But also, I think, honestly, like Ahsoka, I'm excited for that. Excited for that.
Oh, yeah.
Series. I think that should be pretty good.
Speaking of Rosario.
Yeah, right. Where she actually has a leading role.
Yeah.
Besides that, yeah, I think Dune is going to be a big one. I'm actually excited to see Blue Beetle.
I'm getting more excited for it. I think once the early reactions came out and they were pretty positive, I was like, all right, this could be decent.
It's funny. I feel like I have a peaks and valleys moment with George Lopez, and now I'm excited to see him again. He's at a peak. I'm ready to get some more George Lopez. There's moments where there's too much, and there's moments where there's not enough, and I need some more George Lopez in my life.
I mean, never a bad thing to have more George Lopez in your life. I kind of want to see Strays, but that's not like I'm really looking forward to it. It just looks like it's fun. But yeah, most importantly, it's Killers of the Flower Moon and Dune Part 2. That's why I'm hoping they stay put. And
also, Dune, back. You should definitely read that, dude, man. It's a
like
way
a
better
Bible,
book than it is. And I've described it in our Dune episode. it is a cerebral type of book where most of the action goes on within the characters' heads, and it's very tough to portray that on screen. They did a great job in the first parts. Really looking forward to the second part because there's a lot more action. But definitely read that if you have a chance, man. It's one of the reasons I think you should also watch Foundation. Just that sort of that is the trilogy that inspired Star Wars. So yeah. So Foundation
is that on Apple?
Apple, yeah. So Foundation
yeah.
Foundation was written in like 1945, 1951, and like it is one of the best sci-fi creations of all time. And the show does a great job. Highly recommend that too.
Well, I need to check that out then. I think you brought it up in the car when we were going to see Oppenheimer with Serge. I have to watch a lot now. Doing the whole like Hollywood. Doing the whole like Hollywood Critics Association, like they make you have to like they have like grade books, and you have to send in like what you think of like the new releases for that week.
Homework.
It's homework. It's fun though. It's definitely a nice group to be a part of.
Oh, I have to watch the movies for my job. Oh no.
It's the worst. I have to. Yeah, who wants to do that?
God, worst job ever.
Yeah,
watching movies and telling people what I think about them.
Yeah, I'm having a good time. But yes, thank you guys for joining us for Shattered Glass 2003. I know I'm going to get a message about again 2002, 2003 being a sweet spot. Not just for me. I think a lot of your movies have been around then too, except for Overlord. That was like 2018, and
yeah, that was. I think that was our most recent. That was our most. Yeah.
I think it is. I don't know. There were a lot of good movies that came out 20 years ago. So
listen, man,
the
early 2000s were a gold mine.
Yeah, they were good, and this was a good one. I'm glad I was able to share it with you, and we could talk about it. Actually, a really good discussion about. I think it kind of went a little deeper than I thought it would get, but that was great,
dude. This is one of my favorite episodes recently. So
yeah, so that was definitely fun, and we have a lot of fun podcast stuff coming up for you guys. Of course, we'll still be doing the deep dives, and then on the main show, once we get through this OC anniversary episode, we are gonna kind of start our kind of spooky season podcast takeover. So we're gonna have we're gonna have a lot of horror movie podcasts on the show to talk horror movies with us for the month of September and October. So really
and guys, guess what? Maybe I'll be pulling some of my favorite horror movies out for the deep dives. Who knows?
You should. I mean, it's encouraged actually. We had a little run with horror movies. We had like 2 in a row.
My last 2 have been horror movie picks.
Yeah, so it'll be perfect for spooky season, and also very excited to do the deep dives. I know we've always said like when our schedule gets changed, we'll let you know, and I think I've did that with since Overlord. I think I let everyone know that we were going to be recording not last week but this week, so we will continue to do our best to let you know when if there is any break in the schedule. But rest assured, if there is a break, it's not a long one. We love doing the deep dives, and they're actually doing pretty well. So we also thank you guys for listening on Good Pods, Apple Podcasts, Playlist app, wherever you find us. Those episodes do really well, and I think that's just a testament of the OG energy from having like the original people from Back to the Blockbuster do those.
Yes, sir.
Do those episodes, and we mix it in with the new blood energy of Jackson on the main show. So it's perfect. It's a nice mix from both shows, and very happy to do them both. So
yes, sir.
Thank you guys so much, and you get to do your favorite part and sign us off.
Well, guys, thank you so much for listening to Back to the Blockbuster Presents Deep Dives with Owen and Gaius. I just want to come out and say thank you guys for being so patient with us. I do have a lot of stuff going on work-wise and just like with my schedule, so I appreciate you guys letting me be transparent and also very flexible with my time and able to bring these episodes to you whenever we can. So just want to say thank you for listening. We have so many more episodes and content and so many more things that we're bringing out. Keep listening to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. My favorite way to listen is the Playlist app. We are one of the headliners on there, and we just always commend their partnership. They've been a great partner with us. We love them. We want to make sure that we spotlight their platform because that's the way that I listen now. Good Pods has been a great partner of ours as well. They continue to show us love, and all you listeners out there, keep listening on there as well. So keep listening. We got a lot of ways to listen. It is my pick. Finally, guys, finally, it will be my pick next time. And I guarantee you, maybe with spooky season coming up, it is not September. It is not October. I still have a few more episodes to go, but I have some horror movies that might be in the chamber.
Okay.
And Gaius has sparked my interest. I've had a few episodes. Horror is kind of on my mind right now, guys. So just get ready and be prepared. So we're ready to go. Gaius, anything else you got?
No, man, you did that perfectly. I missed that. That was great. All right. Peace out, guys.